Hey guys, it's me, Diaz. Back on a Card Fight Vanguard deck profiles. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, This time we're covering DZ Set 8 for Stoicheia in the form of Magnolia. So Magnolia finally got a new form in the set in the form of Magnolia Patriarch, making it, I think, the only version out of the original start decks that actually has 4 forms. But all around, this deck is very fun to play because Patriarch is essentially Elder, but as a grade 3, so let's get the start, shall we, and see what we got. First today, we have our Energy Generator. You might have Energy Generator in your ride deck as a ride deck crest. Auto ride deck. When you ride, put this card into your crest zone. If you win second, Energy Charge 3. Continues to be ahead of 10 energy. Auto beginning of your ride phase, Energy Charge 3. And after once per turn, Energy about 7, draw a card. Arm pretty solid. You get a free 3 energy every turn. If you win second, get an extra 3 on top of that. And if there's ever a point in the game where you do have 7 energy, it is rare with this deck that will be possible, but if you do end up running in the situation, you get Energy about 7 to help increase your hand. All around, very powerful card that generates hand advantage, but also gets you an extra form of resource outside of the soul in CB, so it's a nice card to have in the ride deck. Following that, of course, we have our starter in Sylvan Hornbeast Lotte. Grades of boost 5k, show 6k base, auto road pawn for second draw card, standard starter, and nothing special to free draw if you go second. You can make this any starter you want. None of the ride line really requires Lotte, but I like running the canonical ride lines for decks, so therefore I'm going to run Lotte as a one of in the ride deck. Moving on, we have our triggers. First up is our over trigger in Source Dragon Deity of Blessings, Bless Favor. Grades of boost 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger. You have over trigger in your deck, reveal it as a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, give it +1 million for the turn, and reveal it during jet check, activate its additional effect, which you get to draw a card, someone gets a critical, your front row gets 10k, and even though it doesn't specify, it does only last for the turn, and if you're damaged on the same number of cards of your opponents or more, you also get to heal 1. All around, I love Best Before a lot because regardless if you damage check it or drive check it, someone's getting a million and you do get a draw, but if you drove check it, you get 2 draws. The thing that either gets the million or your Vanguard is going to get a critical. Your front row gets 10k, so if your opponent won to pass the Vanguard, you don't even have to give a million to the Vanguard because they get the 10k from the front trigger anyways, and you even possibly get to heal. Plus before is like sacking and everything bagel, and you get all the different trigger effects at once, so even though it's not like the most powerful of the overs, it's definitely my favorite to run in the deck, so one of Bless Favor. Then we have, of course, our normal triggers, and I specify the normal here. Do not play this trigger lineup. If you want to play a smart Magnolia trigger lineup, I recommend 8 crit, with one of them being the effect crit, and then 3 either Serene Maiden Lena or 3 copies of Frenzied Harris, but because I like to stick to archetypes and Sylvan Hornbeasts have archetypal triggers, I'm going to run those, but no one can say I did not just give you a proper trigger lineup because that's what I use in my personal build. Anyway, Sylvan Hornbeast Valen, grades of boost, 50k shield, 5k base, standard front of spot. You can run fronts in this deck to help increase the numbers of your front row, which sometimes are lacking, but also sometimes the back row that's lacking. Really not the back row is always doing fine. It's mainly just the front row that's 50-50. So 3 up for front. So again, you can either make this Frenzied Harris or Serene Maiden Lena. And of course, I have 4 copies of Sylvan Hornbeast Palatter, grades of boost, 5k shield, 5k base. I love having the draw trigger to help increase hand, and Palatter acts as discard fodder. Again, I do recommend you run 8 crit and then either split it as 3 fronts or 3 draws, or you could do 7 crit and 2 front and 2 draw, but I like to have the draw in here just to help increase the hand and discard. But again, on my personal build, I believe I run 3 fronts. Then we have a total of 4 crits in Sylvan Hornbeast Jackalope, grades of boost, 50k shield, 5k power, standard crit, and nothing to spell, just like an extra critical goes onto a unit. And finally, we have Sylvan Hornbeast Latarog as a grades of boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Again, a standard heal. You can make this any heal you want. I choose to make this Latarog because, again, I'm going for the Sylvan Hornbeast theme. I've already told you what proper trigger lineup to run, so follow this trigger lineup if you will, or follow the one actually specified. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 copies of Sylvan Hornbeast Cyril. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when placed on rearguard circle from the deck or the hand if you have a Vanguard Sylvan Hornbeast in the card name. So whether you're on Cherish, the grade 1, Lattice, the grade 2, or Magnolia Patriarch, the grade 3, Soul Blast 1, check the top 5, and show to 1 card Magnolia in its card name from among them, reveal appear to hand, shuffle your deck. So this is a way to search Persona, which is great, and as long as he's placed from hand or deck, and there are cards that do both here, that you're pretty much always going to get that ability off, which is nice. And then continuous rearguard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or grade with Magnolia, your Persona Ride increases the power of your back row units as well. So the issue with the Persona Ride in Magnolia is that sometimes the Persona Ride will only pump up the front row, and which means your back row is going to be your weakest numbers. But now with Cyril, your entire board gets the Persona Ride, so everyone's going to be on the same number. All-around Cyril's a really great grade 1 to have because, like I said, it basically guarantees you a Persona Ride, and once you do hit your Persona Ride off, your entire board gets pressured to where if your opponent doesn't work Cyril immediately, they're probably dying on your Persona Ride turn, and if they don't, they're leaving that turn severely crippled unless they sack the over. So 4 copies of Cyril, very great for consistency, and you don't really need too many grade 1s outside of this. There is the Porcupine you could tech in place of one of our first grade 2s, but I'm fine without the Porcupine in this version. Moving on, we have 4 copies of our PG and Planar Prevent Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0, 6k base, continues that's only to 4 Sentinels in deck and also put in guard circle. Choose one mutes, it cannot be hit to the battle if your hand is 2 more cards, and choose a card from your hand and discard it. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. Basically, that means if this only one of the cards in your hand placed on guard circle, you don't have to discard what's great, because that means you can be as aggressive as in the early game, spam Cyril, and spam literally every single grade 2 you see here, and then when your opponent does eventually counterattack you when you have little hand cards, throw down Planet Prevent, give them the middle finger, you'd be good to go. Auron's a very solid PG to have in the deck. You can make this Custodial Dragon or Honeycomb Thyris because the exact same effect as Planet Prevent, though it used to make it Planet Prevent because it came out close to the time of OG Magnolia's release. Moving on, we have our last grade 1 in the deck. One of them in the right deck, none in the main deck because unfortunately it has no rear guard skill, but it's fine, and that is Blossoming Flower, Sylvanhorn Beast, Cherish. I love how he's just so cute. I love the old Cherish a little bit more because like he was kind of dopey looking, but I like how this one is like kind of on his back so you can kind of like rub his belly because he's so cute. And it was great on boost, Fat Kishot, aka base. Alderm wrote upon by a grade 2 card with Sylvanhorn Beast in the card name, so it can literally be any card that supports Magnolia whatsoever, including the old Lattice, but I choose to run the new Lattice in the right deck, obviously. But anyways, check the top 3 cards of your deck and choose up to 1 grade 2 less normal unit from among them, call it to rear guard circle, and you may discard the rest. If you do not discard any cards, put the chosen cards on the bottom of the deck in any order. All around, that's pretty solid because simply riding to a grade 2 allows you to get an extra grade 2 onto board for free, and then you can fill up your drop zone, and there are ways to bounce Magnolia back from the drop zone into your hand, say for example via Lattice, or set your drop zone up for Magnolia Patriarch. So you can use Cherish to set your drop zone up for future turns, or if you're only seeing triggers or you have a better way to shuffle your deck, such as Cyril, well, you can send those units to bottom of deck. And because he does play from deck, he actually does trigger Cyril. Auron making Cherish a very solid grade 1 because again, you get to call the one card from the top 3 cards of your deck and basically either guarantee a shuffle or guarantee that you are going to hit the materials you need thanks to the combination of Lattice in the right deck and Patriarch, so one of the right deck of Cherish. Moving on, we have our grade 2s. 2 copies of, you can either make it this unit or you can make it the Porcupine. I was supposed to make it this unit because I wanted to test out more of the new Magnolia support, and that is Sylvanhorn Beast Cormadet, which would be great if I actually saw him consistently, because typically every time I see him, it's the very end of the game, which means my opponent is either dying on that turn and I drove check this card that turn, or my opponent is going to kill me on their turn and I drove check this card last turn, so take that as you will. Anyways, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto drop zone when you're grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Magnolian's card name is placed by any means, perform one of the following. If you do not have a copy of this on your board, call it to rear guard circle, and if your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, it gets 5,000 power. So bare minimum, you get a free call and a speed become of 15k, or you can put it into the soul and then choose one of your Vanguards, and the cost of that unit's original act abilities is reduced by CB1 for the turn. So basically, Magnolia Patriarch becomes free, which I really like because it helps manage the CB with the deck and allows you to basically slow your opponent down to hell. And the best part is, if you have both these in drop zone, you can proc them both at once. You can choose to call the first one and then give it 5k, and then because there's another one on board, you can automatically choose to proc up the second one to reduce the Vanguard CB by 1. Armon's a very solid grade 2 to have, and again, you could end up sending them into drop zone via Cherish, but I don't really like having it at more than 2 copies because I'd rather see some of my other grade 2s. And again, if you want to make this the Porcupine, fair to you. I just want to test out more cards from the new set. Moving on, we have 2 copies of Sylvanhorn Beast Lixkera, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard when it attacks into anything. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Magnolia in the card name, Energy Blast 2 and choose 2 of your other rear guards, and they both get 5,000 power for the turn. Honestly, pretty solid. It can attack into any unit of any grade, whether it's the Vanguard or the rear guard, and as long as your Vanguard's Magnolia, automatically 2 units get 5k. It's really helpful to give that 5k skill to your Ganoslas, meaning they can be bigger numbers and then share those numbers with someone else. You can make this kind of whatever you want, but honestly, the deck has enough energy to spare, and again, it is a very nice support card to have. As long as you attack in the right order, it's fine, and granted, sometimes I mess up the order, but it's also just because that's a skill issue on my part. So 2 copies of Lixkera, very good for, again, supporting Genosla and making your other rear guards bigger, and then in turn making those rear guards that Genosla boost even bigger. So 2 copies of this grade 2, especially because it's nice for just an early game rush to throw it down. Moving on, we of course have 4 copies of the Big Bear, Sylvanhorn Beast, Genosla, grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. You guys can't see it, but I finally changed the slide to correctly say its English name, which means after at least since original set 3, where this card has had an English art in my deck profiles, I have finally set its name to English. But anyways, grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. The giant Care Bear really spreads the love around with his ability in the auto back or rear guard circle. When he attacks anything, whether it's Vanguard or rear guard, CB1, choose one of your other rear guards, and it gets this unit's power to end of turn. Increase its power at the time. So typically, Genosla swinging for 15k thanks to Patriarch, plus Cyril's Persona Ride boost, so possibly 25k without triggers. That means this thing can give 25 to someone else. Doesn't sound too powerful, but you have to remember the rest of your board is probably also being bumped up by Persona Ride, so automatically whatever it gives it to will probably be in the 40s. But more importantly, if you give this to another Genosla, and then have that Genosis swing, and you have the CB for it, automatically you got numbers out the wazoo. All-around Genosis is a very solid grade 2 to have. It increases the numbers of your rear guards immensely. Doesn't matter what grade the opponent's vanguard's at, so if you open perfectly, you can aggro your opponent down while they're at grade 2, because little to none of the cards in this deck require the opponent to be at grade 3. So for Genosis, very great grade 2 to have, and I love having it for the offensive pressure. And then, of course, if you're wondering about, Magnolia cost CB, Genosis, who you obviously want to have at least 2 copies on the board at all times, cost CB, and probably a handful of other cards in the deck that we saw earlier cost CB. How are we going to balance it out? Well, that's why we have Sylvan Hornbeast Alpin. The little, not a goat, what's it called? A sheep, kind of? It's not necessarily sheep. I can't remember what the animal's called off the top of my head. But it was grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. This beautiful card does pretty much everything you need it to in terms of resources. Auto rearguard when attacks into a vanguard. Again, regardless of what grade the opponent's vanguard's at. If your vanguard's a Magnolia, this unit gets 5,000 power till end of battle for every 2 grade 2 units on your board, every 2 grade 2 or greater units, including itself. And obviously your vanguard's a Magnolia, so bare minimum this is going to be a 15k base. More likely than not, it's going to get somewhere between 10 and 15 though. And then if this unit got at least 10,000 power by this effect, so at least 4 cards on your board are grade 2 or greater. And again, it's already counting itself. It's already counting the Vanguard Magnolia to even proc the skill. So as long as you have 2 or more grade 2 or greater units, it's going to get the 10k. And at the end of that battle, you may bind this unit, and if you do, you countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So it's a way to get resources back for both CB and soul. So you can spam units like Genosla and Beskapati more, meaning your resources are more manageable. So I love having this grade 2 in the deck as a 4 of. Moving on, we have 4 copies of Sylvan Hornbeast Bespati, grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base, auto and placed on rear guard circle other than during your battle phase. By counter blasting 1 and soul blasting 1, you choose one of your vanguards of Sylvan Hornbeast in the card name, and for every 2 grades of that unit, choose a grade 3 less different card with a different card name from this unit from your drop zone and call it to the rear guard circle. Arm pretty solid because it can be placed on rear guard via any means from anywhere, so it is proccable via something like Cherish or even Magnolia Patriarch itself, and it allows you to get more units to board for only a counter blast and a soul blast. And the best part is, if you don't really have any good thing in drop zone, you can just soul blast out a card and then superior call the card you soul blast, which typically sometimes I do, and I'll typically call Cherish out as an AK booster, or if I'm in that point of a situation, maybe I'll call Lattice if I have access to Lattice at the moment. But it's a nice card to just early game rush your opponent, because unfortunately we don't have Magnolia out in this deck, so the best you'll ever be able to call is 1 unit at a time. But again, you can pop this off while you're at grade 2 because it doesn't require either player to be at a specific grade. Following that, auto rear guard. When this unit attacks into anything, choose one of your vanguards with my Sylvan Hornbeast in the card name, and for every 2 grades of that unit, this unit gets 5,000 power. Again, same with its first skill. Unfortunately, you will only be able to get 5k because your vanguard's not a grade 4, so that increment will only happen once, but still a 15k swing, possibly 20k swing is a good number to have. And just one more thing I want to mention about the first skill, unlike most other superior call skills, it doesn't require the unit you call to be of a grade less than your vanguard, meaning if your vanguard is Lattice and you have this in the drop zone, you can call back this, and then you'll be able to hit your opponent with a grade 3 rear guard. Aram Bespati, really great grade 2 to have. It gets you rear guards on board for an early game attack, and it's a good 15k swing. Towards the late game, it doesn't do that much unless you're just trying to rebuild your board, but it does do really great in the early game. And again, if you are in the situation where you have to rebuild your board, it's perfect. So it's a nice 4 for me. Moving on, we have 4 copies of one of our new grade 2s, Sylvan Hornbeast Voyoda. Grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. And this is essentially Magnolia's Inlet Pulse, so anyone that was running Inlet Pulse for some reason still in Magnolia, well, here you go, here's better Inlet Pulse. So auto rearguard when attacks into anything, so Vanguard or rearguard, as long as your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade with Magnolia, until end of the battle, this unit gets 5,000 power, so 15k swing if it's boosted by Magnolia's ability, 20k swing, and your opponent cannot intercept. So if this thing was just a 5k poke, your opponent's locked out of their intercept for that battle, which is great, and it does it all for free. And well, if your opponent had to guard specifically to block Magnolia and they left the 5k intercept on board and they're at 5 damage, well, Voyodivir bypasses that and possibly gets you game. And then auto rear guard at the end of your turn, if your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater with Magnolia in the card name, and you attack from the back row at all this turn, shove it to soul, draw a card. All around, pretty solid. It doesn't require the opponent to be at a specific grade. Literally, both of its skills are free. It swings for 15k and nullifies intercept. And literally, as long as anything attacked from back row that turn, it doesn't even have to be void of yourself. It doesn't even have to be in the back row for this ability. You send it to soul, and you draw. What's not to love about this grade 2? It's a Sylvan Hornbeast, so it's applicable via the support of every single thing in this deck. It nullifies intercepts. It gets you hand cards. It's literally just Inlet Pulse, but better. 4 of. And then, of course, we have our last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the red deck, none in the main deck, of Mercy Sylvan Hornbeast Lattice, grade 2 intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto rolled upon by a grade 3 card with Magnolia in the card name, soul blast 1, and choose a grade 3 or greater card from your drop zone or normal order from your hand, or from your drop zone and bounce it back to your hand. So this deck, unfortunately, has no normal orders, but you can use this card to fetch back, Rakagi if it ends up in your drop zone, or your Persona Arch, which you possibly sent to drop zone via Cherish in the early game if you saw either of them in the top 3. Following that, continues rear guard circle during your turn. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Magnolia gets 5,000 power. That's not necessarily bad because, you know, it's a 15k base as long as your Vanguard's Magnolia, though of course you have better grade 2 targets as evidenced by every single card we've gone over so far. But if you do end up having the only superior called target in your drop zone being Lattice because maybe you've just seen a bunch of triggers that game, well, you can Soul Blast it out via something like Paspati, or Soul Blast it out itself when you're using the skill, and then use Magnolia Patriarch to immediately call it back. So worst case scenario, you got a 15k swinger on board. Not a bad grade 2 to have, and again, it does be useful if you end up needing something just a superior call to beat stick with, but otherwise you just like to keep it as a one of in the ride deck because again, it is revivable if you need to. Moving on to our grade 3s, run 3 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Regiki, grade 3 to Persona, 13k base, continues rear guard or guard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Magnolia, this unit gets intercept and 5k shield, so it's a 5k shield and intercepting grade 3, which is nice for pressure because a lot of Magnolia support does proc from the back row, although as evidenced by the cards we just covered, only one of them really requires to be in the back row, so being able to proc its skill from front row is great, but also the fact that it can actually attack from back row for its skill, so out of back or rear guard circle, when this unit attacks into anything, if your Vanguard's a grade 3 greater Magnolia, add 10,000 power for the battle. So it's a 23k swing, possibly 28k swing with Patriarch support, and you know, being able to intercept is kind of good, unless it's in the back row, or in that case it can't intercept, but thankfully Patriarch can allow you to intercept from back row, so that 5k shield is not going to waste, and if you choose to keep it in your hand, well, you got the 5k shield for that. Arama Regeki is a very good grade 3, because again, that 10k swing doesn't matter what grade the opponent's Vanguard is at, as long as you have the Magnolia, so that's a 28k swing to a grade 2 Vanguard, and again, that 5k intercept is proccable once your opponent hits grade 3 from anywhere, so 3 copies of the grade 3, just a great card to have as support. And obviously, we move on to our last card of the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of our main grade 3, Sylvan Horn Beast Emperor, Magnolia Patriarch. So this beautiful beast, which I had a lot of expectations for, and I'm not necessarily disappointed, I'm just more like, okay, this is the route Bushy chose to go with this, is basically Elder, but 1 turn faster guaranteed. So, grade 3 turns out, Persona, 13k base, auto when placed on Vanguard Circle, choose up to 1 card, Sylvan Horn Beast's card from your drop zone, called to Rear Guard Circle. So, Elder specifically called from Soul. This is better because at least you're not losing a resource like Soul, and you can literally use any single card you send to drop zone throughout the game as fodder. And the best part is, again, Lad is basically hard to get you this via his own skill. Then continues Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, all your rear guards can intercept from back row and they get 5,000 power. Elder, and again, that ability requires the opponent to be a grade 3, which Elder technically doesn't, but the only way to get to Elder is for your opponent to be a grade 3, whether you hard ride it or you search it off a Friendship Fairy, so there you go. But if your Persona rolled this turn, it also gets Drive +1 active on players' turns, which is actually better than Elder, which means, because it's only getting Drive +1, it doesn't inherently have triple Drive, means that it's going to bypass your opponent's abilities with the Blitz Order PG that would make it so they don't have to discard a card. So arguably, it is better because of that ability. And finally, the ability that seals the deal, active Vanguard once per turn, counterblast 1, like old Magnolia, but choose up to the same number of your rear guards as this grade of your opponent's Vanguard, and they get continuous rear guard. This unit can attack from back row until end of turn. So it does eat into the CB, but it doesn't require you to wait till the battle phase, which kind of can suck, especially if your opponent stacks defenses, therefore shutting you down, meaning you may have wasted CB. But now, instead of just having to pick 1 rear guard, you can pick cards equal to your opponent's Vanguard's grade. Meaning on grade 3, regardless, you will always have at least 2 choices because your opponent will always be at very least grade 2, which means you can now get 5 attacks guaranteed on your grade 3 turn while your opponent's at grade 2. And again, double Genosla looks really pretty, especially when it combos off with this grade 2 over here that can make your Vanguard free, and Alpin, who can also proc, especially because as we've seen so far, the only card in this deck that requires the opponent to be at grade 3 for the full effect to go off is Magnolia Patriarch himself. All around, very great grade 3. Calls cards from drop zone just by being placed, gets itself specifically Drive +1, so it bypasses the Blitz Order PG once your Persona ride, and it gives everyone 5k power and back row intercept once your opponent hits grade 3, and at the bare minimum, you will always have a total of 5 attacks a turn to bully down your opponent just by simply CBing 1. This card is like Elder and OG Magnolia mixed in one, and they honestly did a really great job with this card. I like how they handled it. Again, it's a little bit weird that they chose to make it Elder, but basically faster, but honestly, I'm down for it. And without further ado, that's it for this one. I hope all of you guys enjoyed. Again, I think this deck is really great. It's really funny because I didn't like Sylvan Horn Beast that much when it first came out. Then when the new ride line came out, I liked it a lot. And then when we got the new Patriarch, I was even more enthralled by it because, well, the deck just gets Persona ride numbers out the wazoo. Genosla is very fun to spam in this deck. Benspati, even though he doesn't get his full benefit out of it because, again, you can't hit grade 4, you still get consistent board presence and number swing. Alpin is a beast in this deck. Vodavir is just better in the pulse. And this deck just has so many tools to take down your opponent with, and there's so many different ways to build this. So without further ado, I'm going to have one here. I hope all of you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.